Welcome to the Healthcare Voice of the New Right Network. This is Stealth on Health with Mario Nasinovic. Envisioned by the people, voiced by the people, powered by the people, it's everyday people with extraordinary values that make up New Right Network. Welcome to Healthcare Voice of New Right Network. This is Stealth on Health, and I'm Mario Nasinovic. Joining me for episode number 12 is an author, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and an advocate for food literacy. And we'll discuss some important topics from farm to fork. She possesses an incredible passion for growing adventurous eaters through food discovery and sensory exploration. Nearly 5 years ago, she launched Experience Delicious, where she invites inspiring young palates to discover new flavors and textures, nourish developing bodies, and grow healthy and strong. She is a self-proclaimed food explorer and the author of an engaging book series that you can see edition number 1 over my shoulder here, the author of an engaging series of The Adventurous Eaters. So she received her undergraduate degree from Colorado State University in food science and human nutrition with a concentration in dietetics. In addition to being a registered dietitian nutritionist, she is a certified diabetes educator as well as a certified specialist in sports dietetics. I am really proud to also share that she is my first fellow classmate, former student I've ever interviewed, as well as a fellow Boston University alum, where she also received her master's in health communications in the premier online program that we both participated in. Welcome to the 12th episode of Stealth on Health, Arielle, Dani, Lebovitz.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited.
This is going to be a fantastic episode, and everybody take some notes because there's a lot of learning that's going to take place about everything you've ever wanted to know. And we could probably talk for the next 48 hours straight, just Dani and I just chatting it up. But glad that we'll have you along as part of the audience here. We have an incredible range of topics to discuss today with Dani, but one of my goals in asking her to join us for this timely and relevant episode is that we are still living amid the coronavirus pandemic, and we want to explore various ideas when it comes to the acquisition, the handling, and really gain some key expert insights into all terms that are and all things that are food related. So what should we have as part of our pantry staples here and now and always, and how do we best plan for our needs, Dani?
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to change that to kitchen staples because then we can keep that a little bit more inclusive. So the first thing I would tell anybody who asks me this question is to first think about, say, 3 to 4 meals that your family really loves to eat and have those ingredients on hand, especially during hard days or these stressful times. I think it's really important to have those comfort foods or foods that you know your family loves so that mealtime is less stressful. Anything to kind of reduce stress. So think about those 3 or 4 things you know, no matter what, your family would love to eat, and then have those ingredients on hand. And then the next thing that I do is I like to break it down by how I grocery shop or macronutrients. So I break it down by protein, fruits and veggies, dairy, grains, sauces, other staples, and then snacks. And I'll kind of go through a couple of those things. And I'm working on a handout so that you can have that to link to this podcast so that that can be easily printed. I'll probably refer to my Instagram account or my Facebook page. I post all of this kind of information on there, so continual education on any relevant topic, and that's where I'm going to make the handout for you today so that you can incorporate it. But the first thing I think about is proteins. So proteins can be your shelf-stable pantry items, or they can be what you keep in the fridge. And those are anything that from your canned seafood like canned tuna, salmon, sardines, all the way to canned poultry. So in my own pantry, what I stock is your canned seafood like salmon and tuna. I always have some canned chicken for chicken salad or easy to use in casseroles. Also beans, you could do dried beans or canned beans, and of course nuts, seeds, and nut butters. And then I also do the same thing with my fruits and veggies. So there's always canned veggies, and I also have frozen veggies and freeze-dried veggies. It just depends what and how you prepare foods. And I think a lot of people in the last several months have gotten back to their kind of cooking roots, with everything sort of being closed, or starting exploring and expressing themselves in the kitchen and trying new things, or trying new things because they simply can't get the usual items that they've had access to. But as far as vegetables, I always keep staples like potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, and a couple of our favorite veggies that my kiddos like to eat. So we always typically have broccoli in the house, cucumbers, carrots. Those things are always in my fridge no matter what, which is why I can't just say pantry staples, because I need to have some of those fresh veggies that are easily accessible for the little people if I want them eating their veggies. And then did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do they prefer cooked or raw?
They really like roasted. We are exploring raw veggies because of
Completely different texture. Yeah.
totally, exactly. That's why veggies are so much fun. That's why that's the work that I do, because we get to explore those all different ways. But as far as fruit, we do fresh, we do frozen, we also do freeze dried, which can be, my little people love crunchy. So freeze dried is also good for a snack, or they can be rehydrated. And then we like fruit cups too. One tip I always have is, if you're looking at fruit cups, look for fruit cups that say 100% fruit. And 100% fruit juice, because oftentimes, even if it says sugar-free, they've added an artificial sweetener or some other kind of sweetener, which I prefer just in juice, because then I can let the little people drink the juice from the fruit cup as well. And then some other fruits that I always tend to keep on hand because they have a long shelf life are apples, citrus like oranges or clementines, grape, and then I shared with you before, my girl's favorite fruit is any kind of melon. So even when it's out of season, I tend to pick up a melon because it's a favorite in our house. The next thing is dairy. When I say dairy, I don't necessarily just mean your cow's milk product. It could be your plant-based soy, rice, coconut, oat, all of those sorts of things too. But we keep on hand our milks, our butters, our cheeses, and our yogurts. And again, those could be any variation in that quote-unquote dairy group.
In the myriad of choices in that category, do you have one that you recommend?
So my kids are 3.5 and under. So we use whole milk. And I also my personal preference is an unsweetened coconut milk. That's the refrigerator kind, not the canned kind for drinking or having, because it tastes good to me. And it's also another plant-based option of a milk that I can incorporate instead of just drinking whole milk all the time. I don't buy multiple kinds of milks. At least I don't at this point. I just adjust. Yeah. But I love cheese, and we use regular cheese. I don't personally use the plant-based cheeses, but there's nothing wrong with them. And if you're keeping plant-based, I think that's a wonderful option.
Now, cheese always has confused me in terms of nutritional value. Clearly a dairy. I think everybody probably learned that the first time that they ever ate cheese. But is there a particular cheese that is even better for us?
Ooh, I mean, what is cheese? So cheese is going to be a high-fat option. I don't think you have to. I think if we're going to talk about eating cheese, I am of
That'd be a total episode, a wine and cheese party.
Do a whole episode on cheese. But let me just say this: I don't make food choices like lower-fat cheese.
Good point.
When I am choosing these products at the store. And I don't want to go into, we could go on a whole conversation of diet culture and how, lower fat options decrease. You won't have the same satiety from them. And that's a whole side topic. But what I will say is, from a personal choice and perspective, if I am looking to say, watch my calories and limit my intake, instead of say choosing a lower fat option and eating more, I would choose the option or cheese that I really want, like this Havarti dill that I just picked up, which I'm super excited to eat. or a really good brie or Parmesan, oregano, just, yeah, okay, we can get into cheeses later.
Yeah.
But I would say
Coming soon to Stealth on Health, we will have a cheese
we
episode.
will have a whole episode focused on cheese, the making of cheese to the different varieties and what they mean. The different kinds of Parmesan and where they come from and how they get their name. It's like a fine wine. Yeah. But what I would say is go for the one that you want and enjoy it, love it, and move on. You know, looking at quantity and you're looking to make healthy choices, well, then it's not as though you're going to have that every single day. So I always say pick.
Any other staples that we missed?
Yes. So grains. So with I would choose the grains your family likes, anywhere from rice, couscous, quinoa. We really enjoy lentil pasta, so I know it's a good high protein option with choosing a pasta, cereals, and then I always keep flour on hand because you can make just about anything from flour, and we make a lot of tortillas in our house. Another thing is sauces. So it depends what kind of things you like to prepare, but sauces can be anywhere from an easy pasta sauce to teriyaki to having a can of coconut milk. There's so many wonderful recipes you can create using coconut milk, salsa, jelly. I mean, you can use a can of salsa and some frozen chicken breast and put it in a crock pot and have a meal you can put on salad, you can put in tortillas, you can put, on a slider. So
or right out of the crock pot.
Or right out of the crock pot. You can put on, you don't even have to make it to the table. And then other staples, big things to have on hand, like the oils your family likes to use, whether it's coconut oil or olive oil, sugar, baking soda, baking powder, bouillon, and then, of course, snacks that your family likes to eat because everybody wants a little something between lunch and dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think I mentioned, but I have this free printable on my website. And this kind of outlines it in sort of a similar way I just told you about. It's called the Kitchen Hacks My Grocery Checklist, but it has everything outlined by proteins, veggies, fruits, dairy, grains, and then it also further breaks it down so that it's easy for shopping. So it has like your fresh, your frozen, your canned, so that when you're
broken down by area of the supermarket as well.
Exactly. So
that's convenient.
Oftentimes you make a list and you forget something if you didn't check it off. And the reason why this is super helpful is, for example, I have fresh veggies on here. I have frozen veggies on here. There's little check marks, and then there's blank spaces to add those in.
Now, that's incredibly helpful considering what we have currently going on with the pandemic. Why don't you share with us some of your thoughts about paper versus other potential ways of getting your list together?
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but usually when I grocery shop, I like to use my cell phone, because it's easy for me to keep track of everything on a list in my phone under notes. Are you the same?
I'm issued a list, and there's coupons and there's paper clips, and it's a massive consortium, a giant hairball that I actually wind up having to then bring back with receipts attached. So I'm given a mission folder, and I need to then go and address these things.
She's real serious. So she's a woman after my own heart. She takes it to a whole nother level.
Yes.
My husband wishes I was a meal planner. I need the freedom. I need the creative freedom. So I stock my kitchen and pantry so that on any given night I can be like, it is going to be an Asian night. Let's have some ramen or some pho, or I really love Asian food. Or it's a Mexican or Southwestern kind of night. Let's make some fresh salsa and some fresh tortillas and go from there. So I kind of pick a theme of what I'm in the mood for, and then I come up with something of what I have in the pantry and the freezer. But yeah, so bringing us back to the question you asked. Yeah. And I know that we're going to go into this in just a few minutes, but talking about shopping during the pandemic.
Yes, let's talk about it.
What I'll do is that we have a list. We can't remember everything. And I'm the type of person that always uses my phone, but we know that we want to touch less, and anything that our hands touch has the potential to pick up a virus or bacteria or things like that, and then bring them with us. And I'm going to probably say this again, but make sure you're cleaning and sanitizing your phone, because
Remember that.
all the things we touch, and then we touch our phone, and then our phones go to our ear and our mouth and all of this area, which is the place that is our greatest exposure risk to contracting the virus or any sort of illness when we do this sort of thing. So what I would say is, I actually created this the first or second week of quarantine because I knew I was going to be going out grocery shopping. I knew that I could easily check off and throw away, and I wouldn't have to worry about bringing my phone out the grocery store.
At this point, I'm leaving my phone in my vehicle whenever we go shopping, and even to the point of I don't have the George Costanza wallet from Seinfeld, but I literally have just my card that I take with me because I think it's so important, like you said, to limit your exposure from touching all this. So I guess
I don't even bring in a purse. I just bring in my credit cards.
Yeah, I mean, so more broadly speaking, how do we stay safe while obtaining the food we need amid the current pandemic? And what are the basics everyone really need to know and practice? We talked a little bit about some of them, but is there anything else in terms of the acquisition of, say, our groceries at the local supermarket, and maybe how that we approach that differently from a farmer's market or even some of the big box stores? Like any helpful tips there?
Yeah. So what I will say is, everything I'm going to talk about related to the coronavirus or COVID-19 is information that you can readily read about on the Center for Disease Control website. So I actually, before talking today, I just brushed up because this is still an unknown virus and it is changing. And we are learning things about it all the time, and it's hard to keep up with all of the news articles. And so I actually checked yesterday to make sure that I was aware of any updates or changes before I came and spoke with you and everybody today. And so everything I am saying is based on both the Center for Disease Control website and then the local state website that we're currently living in, upstate New York near West Point. And so I use the New York State recommendations, which is far more restrictive than a lot of other states, but we know why it's been, it's hit New York very hard. So what I would say is just remind everybody how the virus spreads. And actually, let me back up real quickly. So what is a virus? A virus is actually not living. It is a protein that's surrounded by a fat. And so it is not living. It cannot actually be killed, but it can be destroyed. And the way we destroy it is by either giving it time to break down by itself, or we can break down that fatty layer with soap. We know that soap, right, breaks down fat. That's why Dawn dish soap works to break down the grease when we are cleaning our dishes. And so we can use that to break down that fatty coating and then break down that protein. Or alcohol, which also breaks down the fat layer and then can help destroy the protein. And then that brings us to the topic of transmission. So we know that it is not living. It cannot perpetuate on its own. It needs a host. We make a really great host.
Actually, an ideal host, I would say.
An ideal host to replicate itself, multiply, and spread. And the way that we get this virus is through any openings to our bodies. So our eyes, nose, mouth, ears, those kinds of things. I think that what we have all learned from watching the news is that this particular virus is most potent and most commonly transferred in droplet form, and that form is known to be through coughing, and more recently even talking can help transmit those microscopic droplets that we can then come in contact with on surfaces and even just in the air. And so the biggest thing that I can recommend, regardless of where you are shopping, whether it's a farmer's market, a big box store, or your around the corner grocery store, is that you practice good hand hygiene and avoid touching all those sensitive locations. The other thing is that after you have visited those locations or have done any touching of any sort of thing, if you don't have access to hand washing, then using a hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol by volume will help you to destroy, not kill, destroy the virus and break down that fatty coating so that it becomes unable to replicate itself. And so if you do touch those places. The other tip, which we all know, is distancing. So that's where that 6-foot rule comes in, because when you cough, the general rule is that that cough can go up to about 6 feet, and that's where that number comes into play. And then the other one is wearing a mask and following your local and state rules that are associated with that. What I will say about the mask specifically, and I know there's been a lot of controversy about wearing the mask, but the mask won't necessarily protect you, because unless it's a N95 mask that our medical workers need and are using, because of how small the virus particles are and available in the air. But what I will say is that that mask is there. It is one layer of protection, but that mask is really there for you to help keep other people safe. Because with this virus, we know that you can have contracted the virus and you can spread the virus before actually feeling any symptoms yourself. And that's really important, because you could have been exposed. You could even be sick and never ever even know it in some individuals, but you could be a spreader. And that means that you can get other people sick. So don't be a jerk. Wear a mask, not necessarily to protect yourself, but to protect others who are not as lucky as you are. And then the last piece of advice is, don't go shopping if you're feeling sick. Don't leave your house, because you never know. It could be nothing. But one, if you're sick, you could have the virus. Or two, if you're sick, that means that your body's already fighting something else. And that means that even as a healthy individual, let's say you already are sick with something, that means you are now immunocompromised, which means that any kind of other infection that you come across, or virus or bacteria, is more likely to then impact you.
And I think that's a perfect segue to the next area that we'd love to talk about, and that is some of those special populations. So tell us a little bit about how what you've just shared with us, how does that change for people with immunocompromised conditions, or, as we've been hearing much more about during this pandemic, for those over the age of 65?
Yeah, so those who are immunocompromised or older, I think it's really important to continue practicing social distancing and only going out when it's essential. Yeah. I think until we have a vaccine or something else that can protect us, you're putting yourself at risk. And so I think it's also important that if you do go out, you are practicing all the things we've talked about, trying to stay 6 feet, wearing a mask, practicing really good hand hygiene. And I would also encourage people to look at their local state government recommendations. So again, New York is a little more strict than others because it is so widespread here. But what I will also say is two things. One is exercise is still important. Mm-hmm. Getting outside, being in nature is still important. So do still try to get out. It's important for mental health. But while you're out, make sure you are practicing social distancing. Yeah, wearing a mask, good hand hygiene when you get back. And if you do feel sick, do not go out. And I would also say that some government recommendations are that if you are immunocompromised or elderly and you have people come over, you might consider checking people's temperatures before they come in. And if they do have a fever, then say it's probably not the best time. I was telling you before we got started today, my grandmother's 96, and so she hasn't been out to any appointments or had people come into her home since the beginning of March. And she has my aunt getting her groceries, leaving them outside her door, and then she comes down, grabs the groceries, and then brings them inside herself, and hasn't been exposed to other people because it's just not worth it.
It isn't. And I'm so happy you shared that, because I think given what we know about health literacy and health communication, social distancing and stay 6 feet away from someone can be confusing to people. We have to communicate to people at a fifth grade reading level and communication level. But social distancing, I think, could be something that could be a misperception, miscommunication. And you just gave a very beautiful way of describing, okay, well, here's grandma, she's 96, she's staying away from everyone, and your aunt is leaving food actually at the door. So I think that's a very practical advice for anyone that's out there that is immunocompromised over the age of 65. If you are having somebody that may be paying you a visit, do it safely, but it's okay if they make that transfer and leave it at a location, and then you're able to pick it up at a location. So I think it's the practicality of that that is very important here. I also wanted to talk to you about the little people. And we talked about your daughters, and you've got 2 little girls. And should we leave the kids at home when we're going to these places?
So I will tell you what I do. Now, my kids are 3.5 and 1.5. And so if you have older kids and, you feel comfortable taking them with you, or honestly, in some instances, people just don't have the capability of leaving their kids at home. If you're a single parent or you don't have childcare, you have to bring your kids with you.
You have to do the best you can do. Yeah.
You do the best you can do. Me personally, so my girls are in childcare right now, and they have very strict measures. They get their temperature checked every single day, and strict rules they're following. The local state government, which is more strict, I believe, than the CDC recommendations at this point. But I only go grocery shopping when I don't have them with me. So because little people touch everything, and they also put their hands in their mouths, and it's important to keep your cute little masks on them. Yeah. So for me, I shop when I don't have them, because that is an extra precaution that I can take, and I have that luxury of taking. If you don't, if you have to bring your kids with you, make sure that you are practicing social distancing, good hand hygiene. I would keep a little hand sanitizer on hand. Okay. When I go grocery shopping,
keep the hand sanitizer handy.
Yeah, handy. Yeah, exactly. They have those cute little keychains. You can put it right on your belt loop. But I would sanitize the card. I would also, I know they make things you can actually lay over a cart for smaller kids. So you can just kind of plop that down and plop them in there. I would have conversations with your 7 and up that aren't able to sit in the cart, or 5 and up, and if you take them grocery shopping with you. And so what I would say is that if you have kids who are not riding in the cart and they're walking alongside you, is to have a conversation with them before you go to the store. We know that there's this virus. We know that it is making people very sick. We want to keep our masks on to keep us safe. We also need to keep some distance from people. We don't want to touch a lot of things. And when we do, we need to make sure that we're using hand sanitizer. And even my 3.5-year-old, who has literally not been anywhere besides daycare and home since the start of the pandemic, she knows that there's things going on in the world. We talk about the virus, and that there's a virus that can make people sick. We've watched little cartoons about that. And so she knows. So if you have a child who's not sitting in the grocery cart, you can very easily have a real conversation and talk about how to keep themselves safe and what that means and the tools that we have every day to keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
we've all heard about studies that shows that the virus can remain infectious for 24 hours on cardboard and up to 72 hours on plastic or stainless steel. What are your thoughts on the resilience of this virus and the time it'll take us to destroy it?
Absolutely. So let's play a game of what if, okay? So I know, and I think this kind of inspired a lot of my social media posts and probably your questions today. Did you happen to catch the very well-meaning family practice physician who taught us how to keep our food safe at the very beginning?
Yes.
Okay, so that inspired a lot of posts, and I probably will refer to that when we continue talking, when we talk more about different types of food. But when it comes to any surfaces that you might touch, what we've already talked about is that these viruses are not living. So they're not living, and they break down themselves over time. And things that actually speed up the degradation or the breakdown of the virus is heat and humidity, beyond the chemicals that we know about. So let's say a person goes shopping at 8 o'clock in the morning, they are infected with the virus, they have particles, they cough on the cereal box that you happen to pick up at 12 o'clock when you go shopping that afternoon. And so you touch the box that has virus particles on there. At that point, that box is contaminated. You bring the box, you put it in your shopping cart, you bring it home, you put it away in your house, you practice good hand hygiene, you're not touching these areas. And then the next morning at 8 o'clock, you go to grab your cereal box. Do we still have virus there? It's possible. But if we know that the virus typically lives for about 24 hours, by 8 o'clock the next morning, the virus should not be active. It shouldn't be able to make us sick. But my encouragement is still, you take your box out, you pour it, you're not using your hands, you wash your hands, and then you go along with eating your meal. So I think one thing that I personally have done is practice much more diligence in my hand washing between grabbing items and food preparation. When I get home, I will tell you, I don't actually have any sanitizing wipes in my house. I don't use chemicals in my house. I have these special cloths, and I use soap and water and things like that. But what I will say is that I do practice very good hand washing, and I don't have time or the energy to wipe every single item that I buy at the grocery store down. And knowing that let's say in the event somebody did cough all over these items and they do have virus particles on them, they are going to break down, and most likely by the time that I go to use them, they will be inactive at that time. But even still knowing that, I still practice very good hand hygiene to work on protecting myself. But I think it can be very stressful. I think when I saw that video and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do that. And then I'm like, wait a minute. It gave me a lot of stress and anxiety, and it's already stressful. And it already has brought a lot of anxiety, like shopping, like, am I going to get sick from going, grocery shopping? And so I think that's really important to consider. And to take that into account, and to know that even if somebody who was sick did cough on these items, and especially as the weather's heating up, that virus is not going to be able to survive as long, and it will not perpetuate without a host.
So we've talked a little bit about the actual surfaces, and Dani, I'm thinking we should probably spend a minute or two talking about the actual produce. I mean, everyone who's ever went into a supermarket, probably anywhere in the world, and especially in some of the open markets around the world, certainly we wouldn't be able to find a better advocate for fresh produce
Right.
But I think you've also given a good insight into that. You are certainly have your frozen, you have your freeze dried, and certainly
Mhm.
canned produce as well. But certainly there's fruits and vegetables of every shape, size, color, and they're all out there. They're all out in the open. What do we do in the store when it comes to our fruits and vegetables?
So in the store, I try and be respectful, and I also try to touch the least amount of things that I can touch. So I was just having this conversation with my husband because I was talking to him about grapes, because in the past I would go shopping for grapes and I sample the goods to make sure they're sweet. So,
You have to. You have to. That's a rule.
rub it on my, clean off any dirt that I can see and taste it. But right now I'm not doing any taste testing. And
No, no.
so, and I think this is important because, you know, a lot of fruits and vegetables, the way we know that they are ripe or they're our best option is by touching and feeling and experiencing. But I really rely on my eyes right now to tell me what is the best option. And then I may feel one or two, but usually my eyes are a pretty good indicator of a good grape or a good melon. I also have a couple of guides on my free resource library on my website, like the ultimate pick to vegetables, the ultimate pick to fruit, and in my books as well. But you can download this pick guide to help you visually pick out your fruits and veggies a little bit better at the grocery store. And try, if you pick up, don't pick up a cereal box unless that's a cereal you want. Try and minimize all of the extra things that you're touching. If you don't need it or you're not really planning on buying it, don't pick it up.
I think those are incredibly good insights and great practices. I can sum it up by saying, don't act like your 3.5-year-old gone wild in the supermarket, grabbing, touching, moving. Yeah, just it's probably best to identify what you want, acquire what you want, safely place it in your cart. But then the adventure is only partially beginning because now you've got
Right.
to get it home. So
Right.
I start thinking about this, and as many as much guidance as it's been given to us in terms of gloves and masks and hand washing and sanitizing and distance, and we've had this barrage of guidance that we've received, and it's a lot for people that don't do what you do and what I do to understand and
Yeah.
to start adopting some of these best practices. But the question I've got, and it doesn't matter where you are, many grocery stores, many states have actually stopped allowing the use of reusable bags. Now, it wasn't a very long time ago where we stopped the use of plastic bags completely. I see the resurgence of plastic bags in some locations. I see the classic brown grocery bag in others. But they've stopped the use of reusable bags because of the potential risks to their workers, which
Yeah.
I think is so beautiful and so considerate.
Mhm.
How are we bringing this stuff home? What do we do now?
Right. Right. So in the state of New York, they actually lifted that. I'm all for reduce, reuse, recycle. I'm all for eating seasonally and using every last bit of every food that you can for something, whether it is an activity or using the scraps of your onion peel instead of composting it, which I do after, but I'll save a bunch of those scraps and I will boil it down to make a vegetable broth.
Ah,
But just a little fun
I like that.
fact tip for you.
A little consomme. Yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. But what I will say is, I a lot, even in the state of New York, or at least in our county, they allow you to bring your grocery bags now,
Oh,
but you have
fantastic.
to bag it yourself. So, um, what I will say that I have noticed is that the people working at the grocery stores have been super patient, very
Very much so.
calm, and yeah, they're amazing. And so if using your own grocery bags feels good to you right now, bring them and then just let them know and they'll allow you to bag the produce yourself. They do have bags there, at least in New York when they had gotten rid of them, and they have paper bags. If you are thinking about being environmentally friendly, paper bags are a better option because you can recycle. If you have dogs like me, on occasion I do like to get those bags because I use them for, you know, the pickup,
Removal.
the removal. So yeah, so I think that's my recommendation.
I like your recommendation. And so, big question. Now I've gotten through my list. I've gotten everything I need to do in terms of my shopping. I've packed it, or someone else has packed it for me. And if I'm being environmentally conscious, hopefully your state or county allows those reusable bags, which some of them are just so fascinating in design, and I think virtually indestructible as well. So that, I think, is another positive.
I have this really big rectangular one. It's like 3 feet long and 1 foot across, and it's a wire. So literally, I just kind of scoop everything in. It's kind of
Everything
nice.
in, yeah. But big question. So I've been concerned about this even before the pandemic. What do we need to do to sanitize our food when we get home and prior to using it? What are other food safety tips that we absolutely should know in pandemic, post pandemic, and even prior to this pandemic? What do we need to do? What's the right answer here?
So thank you for asking me this. You are asking me about what should I do with my produce once I get home?
Yes.
And so that's where I kind of go back to kind of what inspired a lot of my social media posts and educational resources was that very well-meaning family practice doctor who instilled a lot of fear and anxiety in a lot of us with bringing our foods home into the house. And what he did was he brought his produce home, he filled up his sink with soap and water, and he dumped his produce in there.
Yes.
And
We talked about that.
yeah, and as a food safety professional, the very first piece of advice I'm going to give you is number one, never, ever, ever put your produce in your kitchen sink. There are lots and lots of bacteria in there. So if the virus didn't get you, then maybe you'd have some GI discomfort with some other bacterial infection that you have acquired from all of the bacteria that is in your sink.
Yeah. And you don't want any of those big nasties at all.
Nope. The other thing is a lot of people are very frightened, and so they're using chemicals such as bleach, chlorine, or alcohol on their produce, which is also unnecessary. Actually, I will share with you while we do not know how long the virus can live or survive, we'll say survive because it's not living on our food or produce, there has been no recorded incidents of people contracting the virus from fresh produce and foods such as that. So I think that's
we're
important.
dispelling that myth and misperception right here, ladies and gentlemen. That has not happened. We have not heard of that documented.
It has not been documented. Could it have happened? Sure. But it has not been documented, and it is most likely going to be, for example, we'll just say, for example, you are at the store and you are buying apples. Somebody with the virus coughed on the apples right around the apple section, and you buy an apple and you bring it to your car and you start eating it. It is more likely because of the droplet factor and staying in the air for so long that you are contracting the virus through those other passageways than from taking a bite, because that is what the evidence is telling us, is that it's more likely contracted through droplets than contaminated products that you are then consuming. Because remember, we don't know exactly how long it might live on the surface of something. And it could have, it could survive for a few hours to 24 hours. But what has been reported is that you have been exposed most likely through the air. So, and we're not eating food without washing it these days anyways. So the recommendation for cleaning produce is the same recommendation that the Center for Disease Control has made and has continued to have since I started learning about food and nutrition, which is clean your produce under fresh running water. That's it.
Cold or
Now,
hot? Cold or hot?
so the recommendation is just room temperature or whatever's coming out of your faucet. I will say that I have used hot or warm water, especially if there's a lot of debris and something looks really dirty. But some fruits and vegetables have more tender or thin skin than others, so it just sort of depends on what I'm going to use. The other thing I always recommend is a vegetable brush. It's just a little scrubby brush that fits in your hand. Yeah. And so when you have that running water, just scrubbing the outside of that produce with that vegetable brush. Two other things to add to that point. A lot of people are using fruit and veggie washes, and they make all these claims, or they are using a vinegar rinse. And the vinegar rinse is okay. The vinegar rinse is okay, and a lot of those veggie rinses or fruit and veggie rinses are food grade and they are safe, but it's not necessary. And they are not going to kill virus particles if they're on the produce anyways, because we know that viruses are covered with a fat, and it's a protein covered with a fat. And vinegar, unless it's a higher level of acetic acid, and I can't remember the percentage of acid it has to be to actually break down the fat layer, but it's not going to destroy the virus. So if it makes you feel better, go for it. I know I had a lot of people say, well, I'm still going to use soap. And the soap can make you sick because you don't know if there's going to be any residue that remains on the food. And I tell people who still have that feeling like they have to have it, that if you are going to use soap, get a very large bowl, one tiny drop, fill it with all the way to the top with water, do your whatever rinse, and then rinse it under cool running water. If that is what makes you feel better. But the recommendations from the Center for Disease Control have always been, and continue to be through this pandemic, to rinse your produce under running water, and when you can, use your scrubby brushes.
Simple. And add that to the list of things that you need when you're going to the supermarket on your pantry list, on paper, not
yes, get your scrubby brush.
Get your scrubby brush.
The other thing I'll say is you could use like a regular, one of your regular brushes that you have, but I would get a new one and designate that as your veggie brush. Please, it's the same principle as the sponge you use in your sink or on your dirty dishes. Don't use that to clean your fresh produce. You're just introducing more opportunity for bacterial contamination.
Yeah. So Dani, we all get home. We've cleaned everything.
Wait, let me back you up. Let me say this, because we were just talking about how to clean our produce.
Yes.
When you get home, don't clean your produce. As a general rule of thumb, do not clean your produce until you are ready to eat or use it. As a general rule, introducing any moisture or cleaning the natural protective coatings on your produce, even things such as apples, where we think they have a nice thick skin, can actually decrease their shelf life because it removes the protective coatings that different fruits and vegetables have naturally. And it also introduces moisture, and moisture can lead to molding.
There we go.
So I had to back you up there.
No, I think that's critically important. And
store your produce unwashed.
Yeah. So yes, we're home. We're not washing everything when we get there. How do we make all this last much longer? We can't go, or some people can't go to the supermarket with any level of regularity. They are social distancing. Certainly we talked about the immunocompromised, some of those older folks. How do we, once we've got what we've obtained, whether that be through a loved one or we've ventured out ourselves, how do we make it last longer?
Right. So it really depends on the fruit and the vegetable. Every fruit and vegetable likes to be stored its own special way because they're very diverse and they have their own unique qualities about them. In my books for kids, I have recommendations on storage for 102 vegetables and 108 fruits. But you can also find on my Instagram feed, and I'll list a couple of things that might be of interest in just a moment.
Please. Yeah.
But on my Instagram feed or on my Facebook page, I have posted some of the most common. I think I posted maybe 16 to 20 of the most common fruits and vegetables and how to store them to make them last longer. But again, the general rule of thumb is to take them home and to store them without washing them first. Now, a lot of produce, say for example, like apples or oranges, last for a week or 2 weeks on your shelf. But if you're really looking, to stretch a week, I try and go grocery shopping during these times. I've been going every about 3 weeks. So what does that mean? It means I'm using the more fragile produce first, things that go bad more quickly, like our berries. Those are very fragile. They have thin skin. They just don't have the same shelf life as, say, your citrus or your apples. And so I specifically plan on what I'm going to eat first. So I'm going to eat those fragile fruits and vegetables first. Then I'm going to go to the ones that last a little bit longer. Then I'm going to go to my frozen or my pantry staples, like my fruit cups or canned fruits or canned veggies or frozen veggies, so that I can really make what I have last as long as they possibly can. A couple of tips, for example, when it comes to something like bananas. Once your bananas, I'll start to get these little brown spots on them. Bananas last about a week at room temperature, but let's say it's starting to brown, but you still have a few more days before you're going to go to the grocery store and several more bananas, and you don't want them frozen for a smoothie or whatever, and you don't want to bake with them. You can take a whole banana like this, put it in your fridge, and it'll last for 3 or 4 days. The skin will turn brown, but the inside remains the same. So it doesn't look fresh, but the inside hasn't changed texture or anything. So it's still going to stay a nice texture and be great fresh. Something, say for example, like your berries, you can't leave them out at room temperature. You need to put them in the fridge, and then those, even in the fridge, only last about 2 to 3 days. Something like grapes can last for 2 weeks when you place them in the fridge. So you can kind of plan out what you're going to get and when you're going to eat it. Broccoli, you refrigerate unwashed, keep it in an open plastic bag for up to a week or so, and it'll be just fine. Onions here's a tip. Separate onions and potatoes. We think they both like cool, dark places, but you don't want them together because of the gases that the onion produce can actually make your potatoes soften faster and go bad.
Wow, great advice. I did not know that.
And you want to store your onions, don't store them in a plastic bag. You want to store them in an aerated basket so that you can keep out any extra moisture. And those can last up to 3 months.
Wow. I actually observed this morning that we have a beautiful Vidalia onion that we picked up over the weekend, and just this morning it's sprouting. So,
you got science going on.
Yeah, and I don't know how that happened, but
yeah.
we do.
Did you keep it in a cool, dark place?
No, it was
on the counter.
On the counter in one of those baskets where air.
It's ready to grow. Yeah, Put that in a dark place.
Yeah.
It's ready to grow you some more Vidalia onions. You're welcome.
I may go plant it after this, so
okay.
I'll let you know how that goes.
Okay.
I tried that with butter lettuce about 2 weeks ago and failed miserably. I try and observe some level of gardening. I'm better with flowers than I am with vegetables. I'm a failed vegetable farmer, but continue to try.
Hey, that's all we can ask.
We talked about frozen veggies a couple of times in the show, and this can be a concern for many, both young and old alike. A lot of different range of taste buds here. Any recommendations on what we could do to make these more tasty?
Yeah, so frozen vegetables, while super helpful, and let me just give a plug for frozen veggies. A lot of times I'm asked, well, are frozen veggies as good as fresh? And let me tell you that there has been some research that oftentimes frozen veggies have more micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals in them than your fresh, because your
Wow.
frozen veggies are picked at the peak of ripeness, and they are flash frozen or blanched, or they are preserved with all of those micronutrients in there. Whereas, for example, we live in New York, or I live in New York right now, and if you get your produce, say from California or say South America, it has traveled a long distance to get to you. And over that time, and distance, those vitamins and minerals, while still excellent, will start to decrease. So frozen veggies are a great option because they are very nutritious. They're also very economical because you don't have to worry about the cost. The cost remains pretty much the same all year long. Whereas for fresh veggies, if you're buying, say, asparagus, and it's definitely not asparagus season, you're going to pay a premium price for that. So it's really a great option. And I think people just don't know how to prepare fresh or frozen veggies. And so the big tip with frozen veggies is you don't want to put them in your recipe. You don't need to cook them for as long because they're already going to come out a little bit softer after getting out of that frozen stage. So if you're going to cook them and you're going to say add them to a stir fry or something like that, add them towards the end when all of your onions and peppers, say, are cooked up. And so they're just heating up
Okay.
slightly, and then they're ready. So they still have some good texture to them. Easy other ways to add frozen veggies: add them to a fried rice, mix them with eggs for fritters or an omelet. You can add them to sauces and simmer them where you want them to be soft. You can add them to a soup, and then you want them to be soft, or you can puree them. And then one thing I always say with frozen veggies, you'd have to be a cheese lover, but when in doubt, add cheese.
It
People like
works.
cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we talked before about the plant-based cheeses, which I'm not that brave. Uh, but we've also talked in preparation for our call about some meat-free meals, and we know there's a lot
absolutely.
of people in the audience, whether they be vegetarian or vegan. Certainly, we've come a very long way in terms of the look, taste, and feel of some of these items. We've also seen some issues with meat processing plants during the pandemic. So, what's your recommendation? What can be done? What should be done? How do we embrace meat-free meals?
Absolutely. So if you have not been living under a rock, then you know that choosing to eat more meat-free meals has numerous health benefits. And that's an entire show on itself. So I won't go down that rabbit
So
hole.
we've got a cheat show we've got to come back for, and a meatless meal show. Okay, we're
When
doing
we first talked about having a show, I was like, Mario, what do you want to talk about? Because
it.
we can talk all day about so many different topics. But what I will say is there are so many meat-free options, whether you want something that is meat-like, such as similar to meat burgers, to actually, or chicken nuggets, veggie nuggets and things
I've
like
seen them. Yeah.
that, to choosing to have a mushroom instead of your meat in place of a burger, or choosing to have something like tofu or tempeh, or incorporating lentils as your main entree. There are so many things you can do. What I would encourage people to do is do a little Google search, or even better, if you want to make your life easy, there's a whole campaign. It's called Meatless Mondays. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. If you sign up for Meatless Mondays, they will send you a newsletter that gives you inspiration and recipes at least once a week. I think I get their emails, maybe twice a week. I can't recall. But this is a great way to get some inspiration and ideas. You can search their website. You can Google. There's so many people on social media you can follow that are entirely plant-based, and they have wonderful options. I'm going to leave you with one little easy tip. I love to use lentils and coconut milk. And you can literally just use it like you're cooking rice and use coconut milk and lentils. You can season with salt and pepper, whatever you want. Little people love it. And the texture's great, the flavor's great. It's an easy option. So you could do a little Google search, but incorporating a plant-based meal can be, it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah. No, I think you've given us a very simple approach to it with Meatless Mondays. And if people aren't aware of that, like you said, there's newsletters out there, but they already have their first meal to try. I like that idea with the lentils.
Yeah.
So last question on the food front for all of our newly deputized food explorers out there, and we certainly have covered a wide range of things. What's for dessert?
Ooh, so I'm a dessert first kind of person. I love dessert, and oh man, I love every kind of dessert. Let's see. Okay, I will say two things. One, we know that food has so much more in than just eating. So it's experiences, it's memories, it's when you had something, it's our history. And so if I had to pick one, I would probably say
it's very social. Yeah.
It's so social. I'd probably say white cake with buttercream frosting because that was my wedding cake.
Ah,
and it just brings back really good memories. But if I were going to tell you dessert on a regular basis, it would be ice cream.
Really?
Oh,
all natural?
Well, it just depends on the brand. So if we're talking Ben and Jerry's, I love pistachio. Their pistachio is amazing. If we're talking strawberry, it would probably be Haagen-Dazs. I'm an ice cream connoisseur. Actually, fun fact you don't know about me. One, Ben and Jerry's, I think I was in college, and they were looking for like taste testers and naming, and I totally that was like my first video. I made like a whole video to ask them to choose me because I am an expert taste tester. I have not gotten a phone call from them, and
hopefully this will be the catalyst for that.
20 years, but I could do them justice.
Wow, I love it. I love it. So I've been I'm no surprise probably to you. I'm a plain vanilla guy.
Okay. No, I wouldn't have guessed that. Do you do the toppings?
I do nothing. I just do straight vanilla. So, but it's the all natural because I have found that there's certainly a taste difference among them. And the all natural brand, I can see the label and I can understand everything that's in it. And I think that's also,
I look for that too.
Yeah.
The Breyer's homemade vanilla, is that the one?
I think it's Turkey Hill. Yeah,
I'm always looking for that. You know, when you have all the extra fixings in there, like the candy bar flavors and things like that, it's always going to have all sorts of things you can't list or name or know where they're from. But when I'm getting kind of like a simple flavor, I'm always looking, how is ice cream made? It's, cream, it's typically sugar and egg yolks. So I'm always looking for those kinds of options.
Excellent. And I like your idea, and I will continue to replay that for my wife and my daughters that you have said we can do it, obviously in moderation. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do ice cream every night, which
I'm all for ice cream.
Yeah,
I'm all for dessert every day.
Yeah, excellent. There's no stopping you, Dani. I mean, you're not denying us of the things that we want to eat, but in moderation, I think everything certainly works.
Sure.
You have stated that Experience Delicious is your partner in food discovery, and hopefully this episode of Celt on Health has allowed people to think a little bit differently, certainly from creating their lists and going all the way through the adventures that we currently are enduring in terms of this pandemic, up until and including dessert. What's your mission, if it hasn't already been blatantly apparent to our viewers from everything we've just discussed?
So I am a lover of food. I love all foods, and I love foods from all around the world. Actually, my two favorite foods, if you ask me, are Ethiopian food. I love Ethiopian food, and I really love a good bowl of pho. Okay, I'm going to throw a third one in there, sushi. I love Japanese food. Okay. So I am a lover of food, and there's always so much, nutrition is a science. It's a science, and there's always new research, and people are always fighting about what diet you should be on and what you should be eating. But there's one thing you can't argue with, and that is including more whole foods and learning about foods. And so I am a lover of all foods, and my mission at Experience Delicious is to educate about food literacy, and I do that by telling the story of our food from farm to fork and inspiring agricultural stewardship. And what that means to me is that we are instilling in our younger generations how they can do better for our earth and for our planet and for themselves and for everybody else in the way that they nourish their bodies. And so I have that as part of it, and I want to take that piece to help them grow to be adventurous eaters, and by doing that through food exploration and discovery using your five senses, because that is really how we explore anything new. And the overall goal of this mission is to raise healthy kids, is to raise a healthier future.
It's certainly a valiant effort that you have made. You know what? I didn't think about this before, but as you were describing the mission, I kind of peered over my shoulder and I saw the first edition of your book, Where Bananas Come From, and I think that's a story that we've overlooked here that probably fits in very, very well here. So this is that was your first edition of your first book. When was that? Several years ago? 3-4 years ago?
Oh gosh, 2016, I hosted it was 2016, I hosted a successful Kickstarter where I raised almost $11,000 for the first book in the series and money towards the second book in the series.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have an idea and short on capital or the 40 plus million people out of work, this may be the opportunity. You don't necessarily have the distraction. Be inspired. Start a Kickstarter campaign. Try and match your passion and your purpose, like Dani has. And I want to talk a little bit more. We've cited at so many time points in the conversation about this incredible wealth of resources, and I don't think any of our viewers know, unless they've cheated here and opened up your Instagram account or have searched on Experience Delicious. There is an abundance of riches in terms of the STEAM resources that you have available. What is STEAM, and who are your audience for these various resources?
Yeah, so if you do go on my social media accounts, it sort of started with the books, and then it transformed into kind of having this presence in how to continually engage and putting into words the work that I do. And STEAM is right along those lines. So if you're not familiar, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And it used to be STEM, and still some people are very focused on just using STEM, but the addition of the arts, which I believe in the kitchen is all about being creative and using the art side. But my goal is to foster an interest and lifelong love of the arts and science in children, to involve a creative process that you can use for inquiry and investigation and hands-on learning. So I really love STEAM with food and in the kitchen because it's a hands-on learning for not only life science, but also life skills. And I think this is something that we're kind of, I read a quote this morning and I can't recall exactly what it said, but you've seen a lot of those memes. It's like, let's cancel 2020. But what if we paused for a moment and we took just a step back to appreciate some of the inspiration and changes that hopefully 2020 will bring beyond current environment and things like that. I'm not going to go there, but where I will go is saying more people are home, more people are in the kitchen, spending time around their table with their family and eating together, and people who have never cooked or baked before are making sourdough starters. I mean, we are really we have lost so much of our connection with our food. And I think not having access to the same things has presented a wonderful opportunity to connect with our food and our community and our family and get around the table, get in the kitchen cooking together and learning more about, you know, preparing foods, life skills, touching with ourselves what we like and what we don't like and how we can make those things. I think we really lost something when we took that piece of home ec or spending, you know, learning some life skills in our school system. And I think we've reconnected with that. And I think that's a silver lining in reconnecting with our family and our culture. And so anyway, sorry, I digress from the initial.
That's amazing.
But I think it brings it back to that STEAM conversation, because you don't realize, like, let's just say, for example, what is it in a recipe that causes something to rise or to spread? If in cookies, right, we need to have soda, baking soda spreads and baking powder rises. So if you have a flat cookie, what are you missing? And that is science, that is food science, and that is a hands-on application of STEAM education you can use in the kitchen. And actually, I'm going to share another resource from my free resource library. If you have little people under the age of, we'll say 12, this is my Food Explorer Science worksheet. And this worksheet is connecting science and fun with food. And really, it's just the scientific method, but in a way that relates to kids. And there's also some prompted questions for parents who are not in the sciences to kind of get them on the same mind track. So you could do an experiment like, why does my pee smell after I eat asparagus, to what about pineapple tenderizes meat, to which citrus fruit will roll the fastest down this ramp. So you can use something like this to really use investigation and observation and question and research on something as simple as something you grabbed out of the fridge.
I think that's truly inspirational and certainly so simple to make some of these activities more fun, less arduous, and certainly more engaging. I think that's really critical now more than ever. We need to find entertainment in other ways than just our devices. And certainly, you know, the various streaming tools of binge watching various television shows. This may be a nice distraction, and certainly we recommend any of the teachers, any of the school nurses, if you're continuing to teach students, even at remote learning. These are great resources to be able to have people go and do a weekend assignment. It's certainly a absolute great opportunity for children and parents alike, or caregivers, to come closer together and be food explorers, which is literally what Experience Delicious is all about.
Exactly.
Now, you've invited so many around the world to be adventurous eaters through your book series. Certainly, I was a huge fan as you started the Kickstarter initiative to.
Thank you for your support.
Absolutely, for your first book, and it was inspiring to me because it was such a bold step. And for those of you who aren't aware, while Dani and I had a number of classes together, the class that I actually helped facilitate was on nutrition. So try having me, who's traditional healthcare and pharmaceutical biotech guy, 26 years of experience, teach somebody who's a registered dietitian nutritionist about nutrition. So I didn't have a shot. I learned more in that course, and I believe it was you and at least two or three others that we had within our group that just had a phenomenal background, such a love and passion. But what's your inspiration for the whole Adventurous Eaters series? The creativity, the thought that went into this is truly amazing.
So there are two things that really inspired. And how are we doing on time? Are we okay? Can I keep?
We are good. Please tell a story.
We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have two things inspired it. One thing is that I worked with a lot of families, and the parents would come in and they would say, my child's a picky eater. They won't eat anything. And so I sort of came up with this rule, and I said, you know what? we are all preferences. We're all people. We all have preferences. We like different flavors. We like different textures.
Yeah.
And that is okay. That's great. We should honor those preferences and those flavors and textures. But you should be able to articulate what you like and don't like about those foods. And so that's when I started really working with using your five senses to talk about and think about the different foods with those kids, and really thinking about what is it that you like or don't like about a food. And I'm going to use one example. Oftentimes parents would say, oh my gosh, my kids love pasta, they eat it with tomato sauce, and they love pizza, no problems, but they will not eat a fresh tomato. And so
and there's adults that are like that too, which is mind-boggling.
Yes, there are lots of adults like that. So then if you actually have a conversation and you kind of enlighten them and you talk about why. So first it requires teaching some vocabulary, right? Some adjectives, descriptive words, and really thinking about it. So what is it that you don't like about a tomato? And more often than not, with this tomato example specifically, is that kids don't like the slimy seeds. It's the seeds. They don't necessarily dislike the flavor. They actually like the flavor very much.
It's the gelatinous coating around the seeds.
It really throws them off.
Yeah.
So there are two things you can do. You can get low-seeded variety of tomatoes, or start by scooping out the seeds. And then voila, you have a child who now you know it's not that they don't really like the flavor, they don't like the texture. And you can do something about it. I have the same with my daughter. She doesn't like mushy. So that's one side of the puzzle. The other side was my husband's active duty military. I don't think I mentioned that before. Nope. And so every time he would go on a deployment, something that we liked to do was plan a trip for when he would come back. So there was something we had to look forward to, something to talk about, something to plan. And so we planned to go on a cruise, and one of the cruise stops was in Belize. And we did this adventure. I like to hike, and I like to river raft, and so there was this whole spelunking activity. But when you got to the activity, right next to it was a pineapple farm. And with a degree in food science, I could tell you anything you wanted to know about the nutritional side, about the enzymes in pineapple. I mean, I could really tell you, so I could talk to you for 20 minutes about the pineapple, but I couldn't tell you how it grew. And what I learned that day was that one pineapple plant, which is this enormous, beautiful herbaceous plant, grew exactly one fruit per fruiting season, and that in the lifetime of that plant, it may only produce 1 to 3 fruit. And so if you take that into consideration, that this huge plant and all the resources that have gone into growing that huge, beautiful plant and absolutely wonderfully delicious and juicy fruit, and then it has to travel all this way to come to the store where you can purchase it, then it gives you a greater appreciation when you're paying $3 to $5 for this one fruit. It's not as though it's an apple and there's 5,000 apples on a tree or something, it's this one fruit. And I just thought, where does our food come from? Where does it come from geographically in the world? Who were the first food explorers to taste and experience it, and to talk about how it traveled from these exotic faraway places to be at my table today? And I thought, I am food illiterate. I'm nutrition literate, but I don't know anything about our food. And I want to take that experience of teaching our picky eaters who aren't necessarily going to try new things, and I want to teach them about where our food comes from and how it gets to them, and make it fun along the way. And by the way, let's do some activities with it. Let's roll it like a ball, and let's do some food stamps and other fun things that don't involve taste testing. And let's see if then you might want to explore tasting it. And then maybe you'll find something you'll like. And then maybe we'll expand our palates beyond our daily experience. And then maybe we'll choose more healthy foods overall, because we are now food explorers. And then we grow up healthy and strong because we love these new foods, not because somebody told us we had to, but because we know more about any particular food item than maybe we ever wanted to know, but also because we want to, because we are food explorers in search of delicious.
That is,
Sorry, I'm really passionate.
well, it is so incredibly important to share that story, and that really has been the key, the spark that has driven you to really expand your resources, further expand the book series. You're on the second edition of Where Do Bananas Come From, and the quality of these resources, the quality of the book. It's just so impressive, and you have really thought through everything. I do want to share with our viewers, if they want to find out more about you, your resources. You've alluded to a couple of the
Yeah,
resources that are available,
I
your
can
book
show up.
series. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so this is the Where Do Bananas Come From, a book of fruits with 108 fruits. And this is Where Does Broccoli Come From, a book of vegetables, 102 vegetables. I also have a coloring book. I have prompted food explorer journals that go with each of these. I have activity books I'm working on. I actually have a new title that isn't going to be released until July, and I just got my first proof in the mail. This is 101 descriptive words for food explorers, and this is a visual reference guide of descriptive words, so a child can relate to the image and learn descriptive words that way. But you can find me, I have a website, it's experiencedeliciousnow.com. You can find me on Instagram at Kid Food Explorers, a period in between each. I have a page on Facebook, Kid Food Explorers, and I just recently started a Facebook group, Growing Adventurous Eaters, Kids Nutrition Made Easy, and that is actually a community. It's a supportive community for both professionals and parents who are interested in nourishing their families with less stress and more fun. And the way we're doing that is anybody can post a question and then other parents can answer. And also we have professionals in there that can help support and answer from a professional perspective.
And I want to give a personal testimony. I was personally inspired, as I said, when you first shared that you were pursuing the development of the first book, and we recently reconnected when you came back from the deployment in Europe, and certainly in terms of where you are going and growing with regards to Experience Delicious and all of these resources. What I want to share with everyone is this, and this is what has impressed me most. Besides the two of us being friends, and dare I say now, it's almost 10 years. We're getting old.
Right?
We're getting better. We have
We're like a fine wine. We get better with it.
true, which goes well with the cheese show we're going to be
Yeah.
producing at some point. But
We need a sommelier expert. I would love to take a class on that. But anyways,
well, we'll bring them in as the guest.
yes.
Um, what I wanted to share with people, especially about your forthcoming book, what's really impressed me is this isn't something that you're going to buy once and read it once with your child and put it away as a resource. What's impressed me the most, specifically about the rigor that you've put into this, especially with the forthcoming book, more than the others, there is an opportunity here to have a lifelong learning. So if you have little ones who certainly can't spell and don't know letters yet, they're working on their letters, they can see the visual and relate to that visual. Prior to the show, I got to preview your upcoming book, and we did a great exercise where you asked me to pick out a word, and the word that I picked was juicy, and that is a word in the book. The picture.
No, what I asked you was, we were talking about, you had asked your wife if she would pick up a melon.
Melons, yes, melons, yes.
And then I said, what's one word, you
To
asked
describe melon,
watermelon. I said, what's one word you would use to describe watermelon?
yeah.
And you said
Juicy.
juicy. And I said,
There it is.
there
Now,
it is.
now, if you could hold that up for a second, Danny, I think what's important for people to understand, and why I mentioned this, if I've got a child that's in pre-K or younger, they're going to recognize watermelon. They may not be able to say the word watermelon. They know what watermelon is. They love getting all over their face, all over their high chairs. The watermelon, that visual they'll connect. At some point, they will be able to go back to that book. They'll be able to see the sight word in terms of juicy and connect that to the watermelon as well. So this isn't a one-time resource for you or for your children. These are resources that you can continuously go back to. And in terms of this encyclopedia that you literally have developed with regards to both fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a reference book. You don't
Yeah.
read these books from start to finish. Like the front of the book.
Well, little Mario would have. I would have read that from front to back. So.
Oh, okay. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, the front of the book takes you through photosynthesis, good for my body nutrients, cooking methods, and then each fruit and vegetable is a 2-page spread that has a fun character, tells you how to pronounce it, gives you other names for it, tells you how to pick, store, and eat when it's in season. Fun facts. So I mean,
Amazing.
To be perfectly honest with you, not during the pandemic, but I have my book downloaded on my phone on Kindle, and when I'm shopping for something, I often can't remember exactly what I should be looking for, especially if it's more exotic, and I use my own
That's
book.
authenticity, people.
What am I looking for here?
No, that's so fantastic.
That's actually true.
We haven't talked about this, and in the time that we have remaining, I did want to get this additional question in.
Sure.
What are your personal and professional goals at this point? I know you've got an incredible partner with your husband, and certainly two absolutely gorgeous little girls that are eating and exploring along the way every day with mom. What's your personal and professional goals at this point?
Honestly, I just want to expand my reach. You know, I really want to be able to share these resources with more families across the country and even the world. I have people who live in Australia and we're in Asia who follow along on Instagram. Now the seasonality is going to be opposite
Absolutely,
from the US to Australia, but just that there is another way to engage children and families with food that teaches us to be good agricultural stewards, learn more about what we're eating, and then expand those palates, raise healthy kids through fun food explorations. And I'd love to be in schools. I'd love to be in, you can buy my books on Amazon. You can buy my books on Barnes and Nobles. There's bookshop.org. So you can find all my resources on the internet, but I self-publish everything. My business is actually self-publishing, or is a publishing house. And so I print everything in the US, and so it's very costly. And so it doesn't reach everybody in the inner city or in, school systems that don't have the money. I would really just love to be able to get my resources in the hands of everybody so that we can all expand our palates and grow healthy together.
So I'd like to invite everybody who may be watching, if there is a contact, if there is any way that you can help, please feel free to review the resources, purchase Dani's books, and take a look at.
Help me get in real bookstores.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the connections and you can help, I think this is certainly a worthy effort. And knowing where you've started from, that is truly an altruistic life passion come to fruition is just so inspiring. And to anyone out there, it's inspiring. But you had a start to all of this, and we've never talked about this. I don't know the answer to it, and with all the conversations that we've ever had, I've got to ask, what is your earliest memory of food, whether it be preparation or indulging? I'm sure there's a young Dani someplace eating a big bowl of ice cream, but any favorites growing up or any notable mentors along the way? Who's inspired you as well?
So, that's a lot of questions in one.
A lot. I'm rapid fire. Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
The earliest food memories
of food. My second mom, Miriam's from Guatemala, And so I grew up eating beans, homemade salsa, or you might call it pico de gallo, and fresh chips. So every day I would be eating beans, chips, and salsa.
Not
That's
a
still,
terrible life. I can
no,
probably get
no,
behind that.
it's so
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, that's my comfort food. My other memories growing up would be going to a restaurant. My parents were divorced, so my dad would take us to a restaurant and we would order dessert first. But I think, though, thinking back of all my memories of food, there's one thing that always stands out in my mind, and I should have known I was going to be a dietitian at the time, but was at a science museum for children.
Oh,
And there was this like diner counter that you would come up to, and it was a computer. Now, we're going back to the 80s, right? So you're on this computer, and I'm sure it was a lesson in nutrition, but it was beyond me. This is what I would do. I'd get up to the diner counter and I'd put anything I could order in this catalog of food. And then a very big Southern woman would come up and she would tell me, because you'd put your information in, like your age and your, whatever. And she would come up and then she'd see what I put in my cart on the computer screen. And she would say, honey, I think your eyes are bigger than your stomach. And I just
oh my.
love that. I don't know why. I just, I could
That's a
choose
great memory.
whatever I ate, but I would do that again and again because I wanted to hear her tell me that my eyes were bigger than my stomach.
That was her go-to line. Yeah, that was it.
Well, at least for me. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you what else she said because that's all I wanted to hear from her.
You've told me who's inspired you, and I think it may surprise some people. Share your inspiration.
Oh gosh. So yeah, we sort of talked about this. I would say two inspirations. One inspiration for the work that I do is working with kids because they are so amazing and so inspired and so engaged, and they love to learn, and they're little sponges, and they make me want to be an educator and work with them and teach them because they make me smile and laugh, and they love to learn and experience along the way. And that's 100% me. But the other person I would say inspires me is my husband. He is in the military, and he has a passion and a mission and drive for just serving and supporting other people, and he is the most resilient person I've ever met, and he's so amazing. And he supports me in my efforts and journey and passion to want to make my own difference in this world through food discovery and exploration. And so that's, yeah.
And he truly is resilient, and we certainly thank him for his service as well as you being that supportive family member in terms of his continued pursuit. And I'm just so happy that now you're so local here in New York that we'll be able to begin to get together and enjoy the wonders that are the Hudson Valley. And for those of you who
Let's go to a market.
yeah, for
Let's
those
go
of you who
eat.
may not know, I mean, we just have a cornucopia of great produce in and around the valley here. I have a farmer's market that actually I love going. My wife calls it my ladies that I go and go and speak to them. And I may just go and even just grab a couple of tomatoes or a couple of vegetables, but it's just that experience of just feeling good and feeling wholesome as you're going through this. Dani, we've talked a lot. We've covered a lot of ground. We've got so much more to talk about in our future episodes, and certainly we'll plan those out.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let me open up the floor to you though for the final word here.
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I have anything to add. I guess I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to come speak about really relevant topics that I know are on a lot of people's minds. And, I kind of shifted my work from focusing on kids to focusing on current events and how I can help, because I do have that background and skill set. And I am a mom and a fellow citizen of the world, and we all have the same stressors and anxiety. And I hope that today you have learned some things that will help reduce that stress and make nourishing your family a little bit easier. And I thank you for the opportunity to share my life's work and passion and dreams of just raising a healthier generation.
And as your husband would say, and his colleagues, mission accomplished, Dani.
Oh, okay.
Very well done. So for the New Right Network, I'm Arielle Nasinovich. To access this episode and other on-demand programming from Stealth on Health, I invite you all to visit newrightnetwork.com, the right voice right now. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay informed, stay healthy, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.